It's another installment of Trillium Talk across the Village Media Network and available wherever you get your favorite podcast. I'm Scott Sexsmith and very pleased to have with us from our team at the Trillium, Deputy Editor Snay Duggal. Good to have you back, Snay. Nice to see you.
You as well, Scott. Thanks for having me back.
All right, we've got the school year set to start next week, and it's only fitting that we spend this episode of Trillium Talk on education. We'll get to the new cell phone rules in a second, but let's start with the $1,000 a plate fundraiser that involves a developer, the former education minister, and a new school for Wasaga Beach. What can you tell us?
It was quite an interesting thing to look into. I'll start off by saying that Wasaga Beach doesn't have a high school. And so that's been kind of top of mind for a number of years, both for the town and the school boards there. And so currently our high school students are bused out to nearby communities like Collingwood. So back in May, the former education minister, Stephen Lecce, he went to Wasaga Beach to announce nearly $58 million in funding for a new kindergarten to grade 12 Catholic school. The announcement was at the town's new arena and public library, which they recently built. And basically the school is going to be built right beside that. And the idea is that it'll be a shared space between the town and the school and the community. So we got some documents, including a report by the town's integrity commissioner that showed that 2 months before that announcement, a developer that owned most of the land where the school is going to be built hosted a $1,000 a plate fundraiser for MPP Lecce. And he organized for a group from the town, so town representatives, to go to the event, essentially to lobby the minister for a new school. So Bob Schickendance, a partner with the developing firm called Farsight Homes, he had sent an email, according to these documents, to the town's chief administrative officer, essentially saying that he was hosting this fundraiser. And given how important their kind of joint effort was to secure funding for this new school in Wasaga Beach, it would be beneficial for the town if the town's representatives could attend. So, I mean, it raised some questions, amongst some residents. The town said that none of their representatives, so there were a couple of councillors, the deputy mayor, non-elected staff. So they said that none of them paid to attend and that they spoke to the minister for a bit and then left after his speech. They also said that the conversation was around the need for a high school in the town, any high school, because the public school board has also wanted to have a school built. And they also said that the integrity commissioner essentially cleared the representatives and found that there was no kind of undue use of influence. I did speak with the Catholic board. They said that they didn't know about the fundraiser, they weren't invited, and they didn't attend because they didn't know about it, and they had decided to partner with the town on this project just because there was a strong business case for it, and that they followed the processes that they should have. I also tried to reach out to the developer and spoke to him for a bit. And so they own a large kind of chunk of land right beside the arena and the library. And they have proposed a residential development there with more than 400 homes. So at one council meeting last year, there were some concerns that were raised about, developments like this coming up and there not being more schools. So he had said the land would be sold to the board and this would be part of a confidential agreement. I started to try to ask him about the fundraiser, and he hung up. I did call back and left a voicemail just kind of outlining some of my questions, and didn't end up hearing back. And, for Minister Lecce's part, his office basically said that, approval for the school was recommended by civil servants, and that the minister didn't discuss government business at the event.
Now, you also spoke with a professor from York University who's previously worked in the Provincial Integrity Commissioner's office, and he believes this situation raises some questions.
Yeah, so, he said, if a developer is lobbying the government and, is registered to lobby, then holding a fundraiser for the minister could put the minister in a position that could lead to a conflict of interest. He said that for municipal officials, he believed that there was more appropriate channels to go through when lobbying the province, not political fundraisers. So he said, municipalities have direct lines of communication with either ministers' offices or government officials. So those are kind of more the more appropriate routes. He said, municipal politicians are essentially supposed to be nonpartisan. And so going to a fundraiser can give the public the perception that they're donating or supporting a party, and he didn't think that was appropriate. The public school board, I spoke with a trustee there, and they kind of also raised some concerns just about all of this, because they felt that there was a greater need for a public high school, just given the kind of proportion of students. So, yeah.
All right, we mentioned off the top the new school year begins next week, and the new education minister, Jill Dunlop, held a press conference late last week regarding the new cell phone rules that come into effect with the new school year. You spoke with an education union that has some concerns about the new policy. What are those concerns?
I spoke to Karen Littlewood. She's the head of OSSTF, which is the union that represents high school teachers and education workers. And she said that some educators feel that, confiscating phones or sending students to the principal's office isn't really going to be conducive to kind of this, to a positive learning environment. She said if students' phones are out and teachers say, okay, hand it over, like, are they going to have a safe space to put these phones? What if a student says no and refuses to hand over their phone? Or what if a student refuses to go to the principal's office if they are asked to? She said, some of this, she thinks it comes down to, funding and having crowded classrooms, at times unqualified adults filling in for teachers, maybe a lack of mental health workers. And she said she thinks all of these things are, contributing to students being distracted with phones. The minister also talked about these new rules, and the cell phone ban as being a bit of a culture change. And the union leader pointed to that, saying, the first step in her view would be educating students about the negative impacts of constantly being on their phones or social media, because she said that for a lot of students, they've grown up with phones and technology, not the way that it was in our day growing up. So she said that, some students might not understand why it could be an issue or how it could affect mental health.
All right. Finally, Sneh, you obtained some documents through a Freedom of Information request that shows this change came after ministry officials recommended stronger enforcement and more consistency between boards to help address concerns from both parents and educators. Is this out of sight, out of mind policy enough, and will it appease those who were looking for a tougher stance?
Yeah, I think the policy seems directly linked and in response to the recommendations about stronger enforcement, because it, specifically outlines that teachers can take phones away, or they can send students to the principal's office, and then the students could face possible consequences as a result. If the concerns from parents or educators is that cell phone use, if the concern is essentially about cell phone use during class time, and the idea is to remove phones from the classroom, I mean, it seems like this policy is directed specifically at that, and that's what it's trying to do. I think what educators want to know is that the government is going to back them up when they make these decisions about taking phones away, and potentially get pushback from students. If they do get pushback from students. So the minister said that they would. I think it'll take some time, and we'll probably have to see, within a few months, if the policy is working as it is intended to.
Yeah, the first few weeks of the school year will certainly be an interesting one. Good stuff, Sinead. For the most up-to-the-minute coverage of Ontario politics anywhere, log on and become a Trillium Insider today at thetrillium.ca. Deputy Editor Sinead Duggal. Great to have you with us today, Sinead. Enjoy your week and enjoy the rest of the long weekend.
Thank you so much, Scott. You as well.